Looking at all economic indicators, everything suggests that not only are we in a recession, but everything is getting worse and worse. Look at the yield curves. The 10-2s is deeply inverted. The 10 years inverted over the 1 month. RRP, IOR, literally every single economic indicator that you can look at right now is suggesting that we are in a massive recession. But what is actually going on with the consumer? If we look at personal savings, it's below even to a lot of points than what we saw in 2009. Right now we're at 626,000 looking up at the top left. And I mean, that is well over what we saw in 2009. We've came down drastically. Looking at consumer loans, they've increased quite a bit, nothing substantial like what we saw during the GFC, but they've still gone up. So why is it when I go to the mall and I go to any shopping center, are they just packed? This weekend, Friday, I went to a mall. I literally couldn't get parking. You go in, every single store is just packed to the brim. Today I had to go to a different shopping center, and I again couldn't find parking. This place was just slammed. Every single store was packed. You had to get a line outside in some of these situations. I know some people are saying, well, it's Black Friday, everybody's shopping, everything's great. But that doesn't make sense if everything that we're looking at is that consumers have no money, that their credit cards are maxed out, that they have no savings, that you go to the grocery store and you're paying 5 times what you were. Heating is out of this world. Gas is extremely expensive. The stuff you need has gone up in price a ton, but the stuff that you want has gone down a little, but consumers still have the money to buy everything. Where is the money coming from? Justin, before you hop in, let's just look at what's going on with the FIFA World Cup. The Americans plan on spending $1.8 billion gambling on the FIFA World Cup. Where is the money coming from? It does not make sense. Justin.
Yeah, so I think the big thing I would focus on in this regard is the psychological aspect. And so my taking is, like, when we're doing this video, Bitcoin's hovering right around 16,000. And this will apply to equities in just a second. Let me start with Bitcoin. And while Bitcoin is down for the year, I think that there's still quite a bit of wealth effect from Bitcoin. Now, of course, people who bought it at the top, they're not going to feel that. But I think there's still enough people who are in it or who look at it and the drawdown hasn't been large enough. When I look at equities, I believe the S&P last Friday closed at, let's just say, a little under 400, maybe 39.60 as I recall, or 39.96, whatever. The point, though, is that people might be looking at their portfolios, at least from the equity side, and say, well, again, we're kind of down from earlier this year, but we might expect drawdowns from time to time. And honestly, going back to, let's say, 2019, we still might feel relatively wealthy. We still might fill up. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that people might feel discomfort, but they might not yet feel pain. And pain is what they might need to feel in order to actually change the sentiment. Because, Josh, basically what I hear you saying is that you look at these economic indicators, and to quote Manarino, they're all flashing red, and other people as well. But yet, with the economic indicators flashing red, people still seem to be, going out and living it up. It's maybe like the equivalent of, let's say, we're on an airplane. The wing is on fire, one of the engines isn't working, and the pilots are parachuting on the back, but yet, the passengers on board keep asking for another round of drinks. It's kind of like, guys, wait a minute, what's going on here? So one of the things I've said before on a different topic, but maybe it makes sense here, is that I think the existing, this is what I feel, and so this is just me talking on my backside here, but for whatever it's worth, whatever it isn't worth, I think the existing system, whether it's the Eurodollar system, crypto, confidence, politics, whatever, the existing systems we have, if you go into the fourth turn, or if we are going to go into a fourth turning here, I think they will hold on and persevere far longer than we think that they will persevere. But at the same time, when they break or when they finally collapse, the collapse will also happen far quicker than people think it will happen. And I don't know how to necessarily quantify that. I don't necessarily know how to trade. I was just talking with a friend earlier today about, okay, great. So this is the case. What are you supposed to do? Buy calls or sell, what? And so the only thing I can think of, and the example that I used, Josh, was, if you think if you're on the Titanic and you think it's going to sink, before anyone else thinks it starts to sink, if you try to tell people, just look at you and tell you you're crazy, So what do? Well, you try to tell people. Some will listen, but probably many more will not. You get on a lifeboat, you put yourself down, and you kind of row out. And then, much like the Titanic sinking, it's probably like slow, 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 slow. And then there was this exponential increase. And by that point, when there's finally enough mass understanding that, oh, this ship's going down, or oh, the economy is in for worse weather than we had priorly thought, or than we had previously thought. At that point in time, that's when you basically see it's like it's almost like a gamma flip. What's the fancy thing when the market makers flip from gamma flip? It's almost like a gamma flip, but the gamma flip is like a confidence of the mind. So
yeah, I mean, but at some point, when do you not have money, right? Right now, we are substantially, I mean, more than 50% lower than, or about 50% lower than where we were in 2019 for personal income. It does not make sense how there's this much money sloshing around. Why is there $1.8 billion going towards gambling on the FIFA World Cup? There's a few different theses that I have. One is that younger people, let's say from the ages of 18 to 25, this demographic, they've been living at home, they're in college, a lot of them have dropped out, and a lot of them are just graduated. They were working dead-end jobs at Starbucks or McDonald's. They were making $15, $16 an hour. What happens after COVID? There's this humongous need for workers, and there's so much money going around. You can get a pretty high-paying job looking at, instead of $15, $16, maybe you're now getting $25, $30 an hour working at a somewhere else, because the money's there, and you're getting a big signing bonus because every single company is competing for workers. Well, if you're someone living at home 25 years old and you get a 75% increase in your paycheck, and you see maybe 10% inflation, but I mean, that's even coming down a little bit. So what? You're still rolling in the dough right now, because I mean, yeah, Amazon laid off 100,000 people, but that's at the backdrop of them increasing their workforce from over 100%. So, I mean, a lot of these kids still have a lot more money. I mean, I have way more money that I did in 2019. Nothing like I could have ever have spent back then. And there's so many people like that today. A lot of middle-aged people who are not really big into asset prices. Yeah, they're getting hurt by inflation. They're seeing their costs go up. They're maybe spending less. But I think there's still a lot of kids today that have the money. They haven't gotten laid off yet because, yeah, the recession's picking up, but it's not. We are still at the precipice of what's yet to come.
Would it be fair to say, Josh, that, or said a slightly different way, is that the people might feel slight discomfort, but they don't yet feel pain? Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, and when I think about it, and from everyone that I talk to, when you get used to a certain lifestyle, it is very difficult to go below that lifestyle. If because of during the cerveza sickness, or during COVID, sorry, George Gammon, during COVID, you get a lot more money, asset prices are going up, you start to go to more expensive restaurants, you start to buy more luxurious goods. Instead of going out 2 times a week, now you're going out 4 times a week, and you're going out with all your buddies and your girlfriend or your wife and your kids. Well, you're not going to want to start, instead now you're going out 4 times a week. That's your new normal. For you to go back down to that two times a week is a lowering of your standard of living. That is for poor people, Justin. I will never go back. I mean, will never. I mean, that is a very psychologically hard thing to do, for when you get used to a certain level of standard of living and then have to voluntarily drop. That would be extraordinarily difficult for a lot of people, especially if you put your identity on that higher standard of living.
Very true.
So, I mean, I don't know what's going to break the buckle. Is it going to be an additional a million layoffs on all these corporate businesses? I did hear that there's a few local gyms near me that could be closing down, that my mom goes to a gym, and hers is apparently shutting down in April. And there's some rumors about that because rent is too high and he's just not getting the cash flow anymore. I see this in a lot of different businesses, but when I go to the mall, it's still drop dead packed. There's just too many cross currents going on. Who knows?
I think I think it gets back into the mind, it gets back into psychology. And so if you have, here's the short answer to the question. If you have something that induces fear, especially if the fear comes in a way that people weren't expecting, or it's obviously fear is scary, but what I mean is if the fear spikes, and this is where you have, like, again, the concept of this gamma flip type thing, but in the mind, that I think is enough to change the sentiment. and fear is very powerful. Now, whether that's a geopolitical event that happens, whether it's a market event that happens, whether it's a crypto event that happens, aliens coming down from the sky. I mean, I do not know, but conceptually, I think that's something that would provide a catalyst that would rebound in economics and beyond economics, but something that ratchets up the fear quickly and unexpectedly. That would do it.
Yeah, the only other thing that I can think of is I am completely wrong. The economy is doing much better than I expect. The yield curve is all screwed up. It's kind of just fear mongering for no reason. I mean, we may be going into a time of hardship, but it's nowhere near the deep recession that I believe that we are currently going to experience because of all the government intervention. Maybe I'm wrong about my Austrian economic standpoint, where government intervention is always bad and there are no free lunches. Maybe you can bail out all these companies, send out a bunch of stimulus checks to consumers and have a soft landing and slight inflation. I mean, if this is possible, you would have to rethink a lot of your current ideologies, because right now I'm an extremely hard, say, Austrian economist, where I think that the government should have no role in pretty much anything. But if I mean, the market over the next decade sees no real pain, if the economy continues this upward trajectory for the next 10 years, then I would be completely wrong. Is that the case? I mean, the yield curve's telling us it's not, but my viewpoint would have to change if this happens. And for any view that you have to have something that would counteract that.
Yeah. Anyways, Josh, to kind of put a bow on it, I guess what it boils down to is you look at these economic indicators and you look at and you try to reconcile what's going on in real life, and you're stuck asking the question, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
Yeah. I mean, great point. So, what are you guys seeing in your area? I'm in the Boston area, and this is what I'm seeing. Please, I mean, this is just so we can get a pooled data. Do you guys see consumers slowing down? Do you see them still, I mean, booming? Maybe I have a very micro analysis. I'd like to hear what everyone else is seeing.